about stuff we've been doing.
And we are live.
You caught me off guard there, Michael.
Yeah, I know. I told you I was pushing the button.
Yeah, I know. Just getting last-minute instructions to the incredible Kathy Beyerle Sly. So when did you go double barrel?
Double barrel?
With your name?
Oh, so I got married in October. And it's just easier to have both names because people remember you as Beyerle, and then some people know you as Sly. So why not both? Yes.
But Kathy Sly would have been like, because I know you like roller skating, that would have been such an amazing roller derby name.
Yes, it is kind of like, it works for a lot of things too, almost like a spy or something. So maybe eventually I'll shorten it. I'm also honestly tired of spelling Beyerle out on forms. So yeah.
And then explaining it to people.
Exactly.
Yeah, because your surname isn't hyphenated. Same as my partner Steph, their surname is also not hyphenated. So Steph Burrows Fox, but people get really confused. They just say, well, is Burrows your middle name then? It's just like, no. And Steph explicitly ordered me not to change my surname to include Burrows Fox because it's Michael J. Fox, and that's just funny.
Oh,
so
yes.
Well, in our relationship, Anita didn't take my name, and because the joke was like, "You haven't suffered enough." So, and also and also screw the patriarchy. So
there's also that.
True that.
Yeah.
Welcome, Yoss. First on board here before even one of our guests arrived, which is a true sign of a true fan. That's all good.
But I want to say though, looking at both your names, I want a Fox and a Sly to marry each other. Sly
Fox, yeah. Like the classic '80s hit "Let's Go All the Way."
Oh, I'm gonna have to listen to that afterwards.
It's an absolute jam. I was listening to it yesterday, and it's like it's got that funk. It's all good. And also, of course, Kathy being a member of the 3-letter surname club is, we're a rare hardy bunch, and probably amongst some of the strongest people on earth. Just so you know.
So I'm very conscious, Kathy. Like you're taking time out of work for this call, so we have to make like every minute count.
Yes, yeah.
So, actually,
I took off today, so don't worry about it. I have tons of vacation time because of COVID. So.
Okay. So I know, like, when myself and Josh meet, it's usually me that's late. So this is, when we're meeting at Nuremberg or something. So this is incredible. He's going to be late, and I get to give out to him.
Yeah, this is his glorious revenge.
I'll just be passive aggressive when he arrives.
Oh, you're never that, Rory.
No.
In my relationship with Josh, this is normal. So I'm usually the one that shows up first. So it's okay.
But it's like he thinks we're just hanging out. He's like, it'll be okay if I'm a few minutes late. Kathy.
Rory, it's literally in the freaking name. It's the Hub Games Hangout. Like, we have a logo, see? It says it there in letters.
Well, I suppose while we're waiting for him, we can kind of just do our normal catch up on the week and see what's been happening. So as you were saying, Kathy, we normally just catch up, usually on games we've been watching, but also stuff we've been doing.
You've been watching? So Rory's not had a lot of sleep.
No, I actually haven't. And Yoss, rightly so, was telling me to relax. So we normally chat about any games we've been playing and stuff we've been watching.
Here he is.
And things that have been going on. Well, look who the cat dragged in.
Finally shows up.
No, did he ever? Or she, or it, or they, in the parlance of our times.
So, Josh, I'm going to ask you the same thing. Are you able to turn up your audio a little bit?
Am I able to do what?
Oh, just say there, actually.
Yeah, just shout.
Or like lean forward, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I'll wheel my computer a little closer.
What are you using? Some sort of Cray supercomputer from the mid-'80s?
Yeah, I was going to say it's actually an enormous box. Like I'm touching the top of it now. This is just the panel. It's got the big magnetic tape wheels.
It's like just a little round eye looking at you.
Yeah. I've been rewatching the original Twilight series, which is on Netflix, except for season 4, which sucks, and I love it. But I am amused at how Rod.
Pause for 1 second.
Sure.
You missed a very important word because it means that you are watching a very different series.
Sorry, what?
You missed
Are
out
you
the
watching
word
something
zone.
about vampires or something?
Vampires in love.
No, I'm
Shiny
definitely
vampire.
rewatching the
Josh loves
Twilight
his shiny
Zone.
vampires. Loves them.
Yeah, no, I have nothing against the Twilight series. My wife still enjoys pointing out that she figured out that what's his name was a werewolf before I did. In my defense, wasn't really paying that much attention, but I definitely just was not. Went right over me. But no, you are correct, Michael. Thank you for the clarification. I do mean Twilight Zone. What I'm going to say is I am amused at how accurate Rod Serling's predictions for how the future would go and what would still be relevant now years later. And yet at the same time, how all their computers are like boxier versions of the original Robbie the Robot.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest before we go any further that we do introductions because we are terrible at. It's like we're at a party and we're all chatting to each other and everyone else is standing there going, "When are you going to introduce us?"
Yeah.
We are pretty notorious for it, it must be said.
Yeah. So, Josh, because you were last, Mr. West, down the back.
That's right.
Would you,
Mr. West, to you?
Would you care to introduce yourself to the class?
Sure. Thank you for having me to Hub Games. My name is Josh West. I am the head of inventor relations and product design for ThinkFun, nay Ravensburger. And it's not really a maiden name. We're just a part of the Ravensburger family now. And that is me.
You missed the whole chat about double barrel names.
Yeah,
Double
very
barrel.
exciting.
So, like, ThinkFun, hyphenated, Ravensburger.
Yeah. It's, we're 3 years in the relationship. We're still happy. I can't say we're still in the honeymoon phase, but we still find each other's idiosyncrasies cute and fun.
You haven't started slamming cutlery down onto the table. Yeah.
No. We're doing it's the polite argument stage. Like we don't want to have the argument on the rare occasion that something does go amiss. So we'll just sort of politely point it out and thankfully resolve the issue without much difficulty.
I just have this picture of like you working in a kitchen.
It's kind of what it is some days. I mean, we're all at home. Like actually they bought us this sweet new office that a few of us have been into a few times. It is open, but since all the COVID nonsense, most of us have been working from home. And other than just kind of going in and seeing how cool the place looks and working from time to time, I think there's a few that are turning up there regularly, but yeah. So I do work in the kitchen, or I wander down there whenever I'm bored because I convince myself I'm not really bored. I'm hungry. I should go get something to eat.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very thin line between the two most of the time, to be honest.
That's what I'm saying.
You have to put a sign on your what I would say cupboard, or press actually, and say, "Are you hungry or are you bored?"
Yeah.
So
I embrace the hunger. I'm like, no, I'm bored, but I still want something to eat.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Like good food, eating it's amazing.
Yeah, you can't stop your psychology.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So, Kathy, thank you for being punctual.
Story of my life.
Comparatively.
Yes.
So I'm Kathy Beyerle Sly, and I am a game designer at TPCI, which is the Pokemon Company International. And I'm a game designer for the trading card game with a focus on casual products and learn to play. So how can we teach people how to play the trading card game? And I used to work at ThinkFun with Josh. So
And then you
I'm used to him
escaped
being
his
late. It's okay.
unpunctual nature.
Exactly.
I like to think it was a number of factors, but yes, and I will say categorically and for the record, we would love to have, like when Kathy told me she was leaving, I was like, oh, is there anything we can do? And she went, well, I'm going to work for Pokemon. And I was like,
They're like, can I come?
yeah, a little bit. Really? Did they need anybody else?
I gotta say, it's super exciting to have you here, Kathy. Josh less so, because
I get that. It's cool.
it's just Josh. It's fine.
Yeah.
But no, like you obviously have a hand in one of the biggest games on earth, and it's fantastic and awesome. And obviously, you have great taste in starters as well, because I see a lot of Score Bunnies behind you.
Yes.
Because Score Bunny is the best from the latest one. But no, it's also lovely to have Josh, because we do get to hang out when we go to Germany and stuff, and sometimes America and stuff. Remember that traveling, the going places. But yeah, Josh is always good times and good discussions.
Yeah, wistfully and wishfully, please.
Kathy, I do remember our hanging out and playing Lightseekers.
Yes.
You introduced me to Lightseekers.
Oh, it was your fault.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I miss Lightseekers.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
I have a pile of it sitting down there in storage, and actually some of it just unopened. I was given the case. So yeah, we normally kind of catch up with everybody to see what games or interesting things people have been doing over the last week. We can also just extend it to since we last spoke as well, if you're stuck with anything.
Since we last spoke, yeah, geez, okay. Think about that.
So,
well, Josh, as you're going to be punished for coming in late, do you want to go first? What thrills and spills have you been doing while trapped in your house?
I was gonna say, tear me apart. I could use the practice. Thrills and spills. Well, it's really, I mean, and I'm sure Kathy will remember this. Like, as part of the most of the new stuff we've been playing is literal new stuff. It's inventors, thankfully, have been using the time as best they can to come up with sweet new ideas, and I have a huge backlog of submissions that we're working our way through. So I have played a lot of pretty good submissions. Actually, it's a challenge to weed through. For personal non-work stuff, though, and actually I have Rory and Michael, the two of you, to thank for this. Catching up on the FFG living card games. Between mainly Lord of the Rings and Marvel Champions is what it is. And it's because I can just play, it's single player. It works well. And yep. And my wife loves me dearly. She's very supportive, and she does like to play games to a point. It's a little annoying sometimes when it's like, come on, let's learn this new game. And so you just, you need that. I want to push around some paper when I'm not. Or some cardboard or some dice, or so being able to just sit down. And I've been finding those compelling. And I was a little late. The other one, I was a little late to the party on the Crew. It took me a while to finally play that, and get some folks to gather and try it. But I was thoroughly impressed. I get why it's as popular as it is immediately. But that, because you need a group of people, that's a little bit harder to get played.
Yeah, I played through it all on Board Game Arena with a couple of folks through the 50 things. I can see why it's such a well-regarded and well-loved game, but good God, my brain is just not wired right for it.
Yeah.
And yet I'm still being bullied into playing the sequel when it comes out.
Oh,
so
wow.
there you go. I think people just like to watch us suffer. Oh well. Kathy, what about you? Anything thrilling that you have been managing to do?
Most of my free time I sink into Animal Crossing, which I've played over like 590 hours on. So
Yes.
but
How far back into the Animal Crossing world do you go? When was your first? Is this your first one? Oh,
no, I started playing for the GameCube. So
good.
Love Animal Crossing. But yeah, it's a good thing this happened, honestly, that the game was released during COVID, because if not, I don't know what I would be doing, honestly.
You'd be fired.
Right. Honestly, it's kind of hard. There are some times when I'll get on Tabletop Simulator and stuff and play online, but it's just me and my husband. So we play a lot of games that we modify for 2 people to play. So, or it needs to be a game that's just for 2 people, but you kind of get burnt out on those after a while. So we've been playing a lot of Everdell and Root mostly. Root's not super great for 2 people, but we just love it. So we just kind of power through. But Everdell's pretty good for 2 people. And then obviously we play a trading card game, Pokemon, a lot. That's really easy to play online against whoever you want as well. So those are probably our biggest things. We just got Mario 3D World too for the Switch, so we'll play that together. Super cute. But yeah, for 2 people games, I think Everdell's a great one that you can play with 2. That's meant for more, but yeah. Also, I roller skate, so I've been trying to just roller skate every day, and it's hard.
Well, are you trying to do that whilst playing Animal Crossing? Because that's going to pose a problem.
No, sometimes I do watch a tutorial video on my phone as I'm skating, and I almost always fall over. So I need to not do that.
You need to watch the video on how to watch a video whilst roller skating.
Exactly.
That's getting very meta now.
Yeah.
I was going to say, that's what they'll say like in action when they're wheeling you into the ER. Meta. I'm going to love writing up this report. That is a point of clarification because I'm a little biased. You mean roller skating, right? Like, I think that's pretty cool.
Yes, actually, I rollerblade and roller skate, but I am learning how to skate. That's the 4 wheels, because you can really like bust a move, do a little disco with that. Whereas rollerblades, it's really just speed and kind of like working out. So roller skating.
My brain is in a blank on the movie, the roller derby one.
Whip it
to my daughters, and they completely fell in love with it. I was like, "You're cool kids."
We have a roller derby team here in Belfast, but obviously they've not been able to do any matches for some time for some inexplicable reason. But yeah, it'll be cool. Once all this is done and dusted, it'll be nice to actually go down and check out some matches again. I used to work with the Milton Keynes Concrete Cows. Did some DJing and presenting with them for a while, and then the Manchester Skate Troopers in New Hampshire was also my local team. Yeah, if you love puns, my God, get into roller derby. It's freaking amazing.
And apparently, when the time comes, just found this out recently, Essen, Germany apparently has a substantial roller derby team and local interest. And so when we can finally travel again, I know where I'm having my after-work meetings. Like, let's go check out that roller derby.
Yeah, totally.
Actually, I think that's one of the few things, because a lot of people are going out to bars and stuff afterwards, after working, but that would make me not play games to just go and watch roller derby. That'd be pretty cool.
Check out some roller derby. Like, I just, German roller derby. Okay.
Let's have a look. The Ruhrpott Roller Girls is the women's flat track roller derby league based in Essen, founded in 2009. Teams: the Devil Dolls and the Devil's Rejects.
That's hardcore.
That's powerful.
I was 70% there at Essen Roller Derby League, so this is only sealing the deal, man.
It's just like I want a T-shirt that just sort of like has the Devil's Rejects on it in big letters. I'm totally there for it. That's all good. Rory, what have you been up to? What thrills and spills to report? Tell us about the mouse.
Yes, so our neighbours, well, really quickly, our neighbours had mice while they were away, and we spotted one last night in my daughter's bedroom. So I was up. That's why I was up late last night trying to deal with it using tinfoil and peppermint oil. Because
So
I just had.
You mentioned this on our Slack this morning. What the hell does tinfoil, or tinfoil, as you put down, and peppermint oil, what does that do?
So they really do not like the scent of peppermint oil.
Okay.
Like they'll just steer clear of it. So it acts as a deterrent, which is all I could really do because they'd gone back into the kind of the wall. And then tinfoil is they really don't like the smell and I think like the feeling of it.
Like cats. Cats supposedly don't like standing on tinfoil.
Yeah, so I just put some of it. I didn't realize it should have been flat because I kind of crumpled it up and like tucked it in against the wall where they would be coming out, and they were like sucker. But I've just bought some humane mouse traps as well, so I'll be doing that after we hang up.
Set them free in Ormo Park. Have a good life. Enjoy yourself.
I have had a conversation with John Fiore at the weekend, who is co-designer on Untold, and he was chatting about how he's been playing D&D using Untold as essentially the GM and the story generator. So I've started creating characters to do the same thing.
Cool.
So I kind of want to make a video about it. So I've actually been making 4 completely random characters. Like I've just been I randomly selected what you're going to be. I was using this supplement. It's like a zine that has a new way of dealing with. It doesn't do race; it does ancestry and upbringing. So ancestry and culture. So you can actually mix all of them together. So you can have essentially an orc human grow up in a gnomish community. So I do have an orc who I randomly rolled as a warlock, has grown up in a gnome community, and I randomly generated his background, and he's a folk hero. So already, like, my mind is spinning as to like what's happened there.
It's like the idea of all these dwarves just sort of like going,
yeah,
what?
Yeah,
it's like a very elf situation.
All onion.
But it's what he was saying is it's a kind of a way for him to learn some of the rules and test out some of the rules. And it's really neat. Like you treat basically each game of Untold as a day in kind of adventure terms. And so he doesn't do any experience. He doesn't track XP. He just kind of treats essentially you're tracking each session you play. So after the first session, you're going to level up. After the next one, you'll level up, and then it becomes like every third one you start leveling up as well. So the process is a bit quicker. But he was like, I was asking him how it worked, and he just kept telling me stories, which were brilliant. It was like, no, we want to talk about the mechanics, but he was telling me all these things that happened just from playing it. So yeah, I'll probably do a live play at some point, or live stream. So I might have to edit it. But yeah, so I've just been generating characters for D&D is about all I've done this week. And the 3D printer arrived. So today I did 2 test prints. So I printed out the like on-screen advertising. And I can't blow this, but it's from Joss. So Joss has actually been really helpful. I printed out this 3D whistle as well.
Could you not have 3D printed a ball inside the whistle?
It doesn't need it. It works without it. I'm just not going to blow it on camera.
I mean, I thought it would be funny, but just deafen all of us and all of the viewers.
No, I think the last time I did something like that, everyone complained.
That's all good.
Your complaints. But I gotta say, compared to the other 2 printers that I've gone through and cursed, this was like a piece of cake to set up and get working. So,
I look forward to checking out my Slidey Marvel Champions Ant-Man stroke the Wasp thing whenever you get around to doing them.
yes.
What? So, may I ask what the printer is, just out of curiosity?
It's a Prusa i3 Mark 3S Plus. It's the latest version of it, and I bought it pre-assembled. So I could have bought it like in kit form, but I was having traumatic flashbacks of the last two printers that I assembled, and I was like, no, I want this one to work. So I went for. I was willing to pay the extra to save me the time.
No, that's super understandable. And like Yoss says, now the fun stuff starts. It begins.
So actually, first on my list is an Ox for Test of Honor, just as a simple test for the game.
Cool.
Not as a vehicle for your giant Paul Bunyan orc dwarf human orc ginormous with his gnomish adoptive parents.
Yes, you design it and I'll print it.
You're gonna have to print it in pieces.
We'll get Ken to design it. It'll be fine. Ken can do that sort of thing. It'll be good. Or Yoss. We'll have them both do it. It'll be good.
Cheer it up.
So what about you, Michael? What have you been doing?
I have actually been doing a lot more video gamey stuff this weekend and past week. The, I guess, spiritual sequel, because it's not really a proper sequel, to one of my favorite games of all time ever came out last week. So that's Persona 5 Strikers, which is a sequel to Persona 5, which I already put a couple of 100 hours into Persona 5, and then let's say another 100 hours into Persona 5 Royal, the spin-off version. So this is now a brand new adventure with the Scooby Gang, once again, using a completely different system. So rather than it being like a relatively standard-ish JRPG, it is a thing called Muso, which is basically there are hundreds of enemies on the screen, and you can take them all down in about 14 seconds by just smacking the crap out of them. Hyrule Warriors on the Switch was another one in that sort of like Musu thing, but most people know it from a game series called Dynasty Warriors.
Yeah.
So yeah. And it's great. It's lovely. It's like putting on an old pair of shoes, because you know all the characters, you know the relationships, you know the dynamics between them all, and it's just sort of like, all right, let's just go do some weird stuff. And it's an absolute delight. It's really, really lovely. On top of that, stream-wise, I've been playing, as Yoss says in the chat, Loop Hero, and more Loop Hero, which is an auto-battler game where you have literally no control over the character that you are playing. They just sort of like they walk around a loop, and if they come across a monster, they fight the monster. But what you do have control over is the environment. So like cards will drop that you can actually drop into the loop or around it to make buildings, to make mountains and meadows and stuff, and everything that you put on the loop has an effect. So buildings and sites will spawn new monsters who you then get to fight. But then you also get to, when you beat the monsters up, you also get to get gear, which upgrades your hero. And oh my God, it's beautiful. It's like a horrifying spreadsheet juggling monstrosity of a game in glorious 16-bit Super Nintendo style graphics. And it's like, it hits all of the dopamine things in your head, because the numbers always go up. And it's just, I said, if I do this, this number will go up. But if I do this, this number will go up. But if I do it with this one, both of those numbers will go up. And you're just constantly on the lookout for ever so slightly better gear. And then there's like a tech tree element as well. There's a crafting element. It's just throwing 9 million different things at a game. And it's just the demo that I've been playing like super solidly. The actual game doesn't officially come out until tomorrow, which I've already, bought and paid for. because it's very much sort of like my sort of game, you know, massacre kind of things. And yeah, I've been playing on stream with folks, and it's been absolutely lovely, absolutely cracking. And we also started a.
I'm gonna cut you off.
Oh, go on then. Fine.
Because we're getting to 7:30 and we haven't started talking about the topic.
Well, let's talk about the topic, Rory. I can't think why. Yeah. I mean, it's not like anybody showed up late.
No. You just like Nuclear a lot, Michael.
That's all right. So, what is tonight's topic, Rory? Please do tell.
So, I'm actually going to ultimately kick it to Kathy, but after kind of going backwards and forwards, Kathy kind of raised the point of suggesting we talk about kids games, and so the kind of title for tonight is like, it's just a kids game, or is it? Because it's kind of like there's more to them than you think, and they get a kind of bad rap. I guess with Kathy in particular, some of the games you've designed, and then moving to Pokemon, and Josh working with ThinkFun, where, I mean, the games will be kind of, I think, would generally fall into the educational stroke kind of, you know, children's category, but they're not. So I think it was having a conversation about that. So I'm actually going to start, Kathy, and ask, like, why did you're the one who kind of said it in this way? Like, why do you want to talk about this topic?
Yeah, so I think what really blows my mind is that I have a lot of friends that have kids. I have a niece who's about 5 now. And something that really surprises me is that when you step away from people like us, who obviously play board games, I don't think that there's a lot of knowledge for parents about all that's available out there for kids to try. That's outside of those classic, Candyland, Monopoly. We're getting to the point where when you walk into like a massive store like Target, there is way more offering now, but I'm so surprised to see that when kids are starting to play board games, a lot of them are still starting with games that are a million years old. And I don't think that a lot of parents have a good time playing games with their kids because we're getting into these repetitive, you know, spin and move or roll and move games when there's so much more available. And it's kind of, how do we transition kids into these new board games that we have available? And also, how do we build families that can play board games together? For these families that maybe don't have a lot of experience with tabletop games in general, like, what is the game that's going to get them to that point? I don't think it's Candyland, but we could have that argument. So I was just wondering, maybe we could start by thinking about what were some kids games that we experienced, and maybe it is Monopoly and maybe it is Candyland, and compare it to a kid game that we enjoy maybe from the last 3 years, to see what the difference is there.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So I'll do that, I guess, in a second. I'm just wondering, Josh, like, why is the topic of interest to you?
Well, I mean, basically, you and Kathy have sort of touched on both points. I too am sort of fascinated when any of us, and I'm sure it's the same with all three of you, when you're in that, you know, in the work thing, and we're on the industry side, and we're like, it's huge, there's billions of dollars in toys and games. The game industry alone is this monstrous thing. And then I go to my neighbors, and anytime I mention what I do, they know Monopoly, they know Trivial Pursuit. Like, it's just this complete disconnect. And you're sort of like, oh yeah, how are you not into this? And there does seem to be, and in my experience, it's almost even a little more here in the States. You may experience this differently, so this is partially a question when I make the statement. Mm-hmm. But it's sort of like anything that's, you know, games, toys, cartoons, that sort of thing. They're particularly in the U.S., there reaches a point where you kind of set aside childish things, And I think recently, within the past decade, we're getting to the point where cartoons might be still entertaining and not just Disney. And likewise with games and collectibles and whatever else you want to call it. And I think we're seeing that explosion. But I am sort of equally interested, as Kathy put it, in how you got into it and how are we embracing potentially keeping games as a consistent thing that you can do to pass the time. You know, the big money's on what's going to happen when we're done with COVID. Obviously, everybody's going to run out. Are they? Like, I'm sure you'll go out and you'll go back to bars, but then when you get there, you're sort of sitting live with all the people that you just spent the last year and a half talking to on Zoom. So what are you going to talk about now? Maybe you'd like to play a game?
I think there's going to be an explosion in party games. That's just me. But that is a discussion topic for another time. Rory, what are you thinking? The points have been made. I push it to you.
Well, I think there's an organic thing that's kind of happening with the age of people kind of growing up who have been exposed to games. And so we're seeing them introducing games to a younger audience. But that's like a slow organic process that's happening. I think the kind of thing we're talking about is like, how do we accelerate that? Because there's I totally have the same picture. Like, there's a local store here called Smith's Toy Stores. And when you go in, they have all the regular toys. And then they have this wall of stuff that is landfill waiting to happen. You know, and it's quite often placement that's been bought by companies to ensure that it happens. And that's where people are going to buy stuff. And the staff don't even know about games and options. And I remember talking to someone who actually worked there, and they were saying, like, one of the big issues with Smiths is they don't train the staff to know about games, so they can't actually sell anything. They can tell you where it is, but they don't train them to actually have a perspective on being able to recommend things to somebody. And therefore, the only stuff they can sell really is the stuff that's on TV. You know, that the people are coming in and asking for that. They're like a big warehouse for you to come in and buy the thing that you're shown on TV. You come in, pick it up, the staff serve you, and you go. There's no kind of knowledge. And there was a conversation a couple of years ago about trying to transition that. It hasn't happened. But that would have been an opportunity for that to change. And so I think in terms of because there's lots to talk about in terms of the perception of kids games, even within the gaming community. But I think my whole thing about adults playing games is usually a lot of adults have never read a rule book for a game. They've been taught it by somebody. You know, there's always this thing of somebody else taught you the game. And so there's a concern about reading new rules and kind of understanding those things, that it's too much kind of hassle. And so you kind of err on the side of the stuff that you know already. So I think that's kind of part of what we're dealing with. And that's why the old things get kind of brought out again and again and again, because there's a certain familiarity with those things. And what you're trying to do is essentially nudge people onto a different path, but there's actually nowhere for them to see it because it's not in the store that they go to shop in doesn't actually have it. And it's to some degree.
Go on, you finish.
Oh yeah, so last bit. So I think one of the things that started to happen is in TV shows where, we've talked about, I think in the early thousands, the rise of the nerds, or the geeks, where we had the TV shows, people in positions of responsibility, power, but we were seeing characters appearing on TV, and they were basically slipping games into the TV shows. And so people were seeing them, and they were part of the narrative, and people became curious about those games. And I think that's kind of slipped away again, because media has just like exploded in terms of everyone's watching their own stuff, and there's no real central place to see those things. So no one's being exposed to anything new. They're just being exposed to the stuff they're interested in already.
Cool.
That's sorry, that went on a lot longer than I had anticipated.
That's all right. No. I mean, so I take your points that you're making there. When I was a kid, the games that I played, and we've spoken about this on previous episodes, the games I played were generally on my own. But I did ask, for board games anyway. Kathy, don't be sad. I just lived on the other side of the city of London to where my school was, so I didn't live near any friends. So I just played a lot of games on my own. It's a tragic life. But I was happy, I was happy to do it because I would still like playing games. So the stuff that I played was, and this is before the Great Hero Quest Awakening. Things like MB did a series of games based around arcade titles, which I remember with great fondness, like the Pac-Man game, and Zaxxon was another one. There was a Berserk one. I would freaking love to have them back in my collection now, to be honest. Yoss in the chat mentioned Ghost Castle, aka Spook Slot. That was another one that I hacked together some solo rules for as well. That was always cool. But yeah, the games that the vast majority of people that when I did get to hang out with folks, the games that the vast majority of people would play were, as Rory said, the old ones. And it was because, let's be brutally honest, the grown-ups didn't really want to bother learning a game and then teaching it to the kids. And we didn't have the understanding or patience to learn it ourselves. So, let's just play the thing that we know already, even though we're playing it incorrectly. Hello, Monopoly, I'm looking at you. Yeah, because none of us played Monopoly right when we were a kid. None of us did. And it passes down through the generations, and it's still a problem. But it is a little bit weird because there is this small sort of section of society, like Rory said, I think, that know good games exist and want to sort of see if they can introduce good games to their kids, the kids of friends around them, that sort of thing. And that's fantastic and lovely. But the vast majority, like Rory said, they're going into places like Smith's or Toys R Us, as it was, these big warehouses where the buyers at the top of the chain are just buying the same old, because it's really, they know it'll sell. It's this weird sort of vicious circle of, we're only going to get the stuff that we know because we know it will sell. We can buy it in massive bulk. We can sell it cheaply. And so the cycle of life continues. And Rory's disappeared.
I am back. Sorry. It's... It's
a moment
on my own, Rory.
He was back.
Classes, online lectures day today, so it just happens to overlap with our stream.
But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is it's a socio-economic thing, which is a very big word for this time of the night. But I think a lot of it goes down to that. It will, it will sort of shift, the kind of games that we love, that will shift to a larger group, that's for sure. But I don't think it's ever going to be able to take on the monolith of hungry hippos and countless, versions of Hi-Ho Cherry-O and Shoots and Ladders. I mean, when we see something like Dobble, for example, that sells incredibly well, or Spot It in the States, that, in comparison to your average numbers for hungry hippos, is a drop in the bucket.
So, and this is where, Kathy, I think you can be the great hope. There's
so many ways.
Yeah,
save us, Kathy. Save us.
There's an element, I think there's also shifting attitudes towards children, right? So when we were growing up, kids were don't be a nuisance, get out of the way. Whereas that attitude has shifted now. So parents are willing to spend time with their kids, and now they're going, oh, but I don't want to play this boring game. So it's trying to find something that's mutually beneficial. all the stuff you're talking about that is being generally bought and played is being sold in like a 30-second pitch or a 60-second pitch. So it's visual, active. There's some activity in it, and I think that speaks to Josh, some of your work in terms of like the actual physical components of games, and then Kathy, you have this existing kind of IP that is known and loved around the world, and it's like you kind of got to use that to sneakily introduce other game mechanics to people around the around the Pokemon IP to kind of broaden that awareness. But you know what I mean? It's people will buy. There's licensed games that people will buy, and they're willing to buy it because it's familiar from other areas. Generally, though, the gameplay doesn't stand up to the IP, and the person doesn't really care because they were into the IP in the first place. And to me, that's where the kind of, if you're talking about introducing people to games, that to me is the most powerful thing. It's almost like the IP-based games that actually have a really good game behind them. And I think my understanding is the recent Scooby-Doo one that Senfung Lim had co-designed. It's definitely the right direction.
Chronicles, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Essentially, it's a kind of escape room type game, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
I haven't played it, but I've talked to them a little bit about it, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, Kathy, in that respect, I'm kind of curious. Obviously, NDAs and all of the rest of it, but I'm kind of curious from your, like, how do you see things from your position and like your new position now within Pokemon, and how you think about engaging younger players? Because I'm guessing that's part of your remit, is design stuff that's going to engage younger players.
Yeah. So, I've been playing the trading card game since I was a kid, and it used to be owned by Wizards back in the day, the same people that make Magic the Gathering. And I think the same problem existed then that existed now, is that a ton of people, it's not a problem for me, obviously, buy the cards, and a really small fraction know how to play.
Mm-hmm.
So you love to collect the cards and you love to look at the art, but at the end of the day, who understands it's actually a game is a very small percentage of people out there. And this could be because kids watch the anime and then they buy, the cards, their parents get it for them, or maybe they played the video game first, or now Pokemon Go is so big. Maybe kids are playing Pokemon Go and then they wander upon the trading cards and they buy them and they never connect the two, that there's a way to play with the cards. So basically my position is to teach people in a way that works how to play. So what does that mean? All I can really say is Battle Academy is great and it's out. But at the end of the day, one of the biggest hurdles with the Pokemon trading card game is that it's very text heavy and it's very math heavy. And that's always going to be a problem, especially when you're trying to reach the audience that watches the anime is quite young. So we're looking at like 5 and 6 year olds. And they can't really do math for things like 200 HP, those types of things. So it's like, how can we better marry these two together to create something that works for the age, and then also gets people playing Pokemon for longer. So that's kind of where I'm at, and it's hard. Trading card games in general are really hard to learn. If you think back to, if you've ever remember how you learned how to play Magic the Gathering, like, sure, now I know and I can sit down and play, but that first hurdle of learning, it's actually pretty difficult. I would say it's more difficult than playing just an average board game.
That's right. I've never learned to play Magic the Gathering, so...
Well, there you go. Now it's not the time. No.
And failed.
Yeah, it's a lot to remember and a lot of interactions. So it's very difficult.
Well, sorry.
No, I have an idea, but I'll.
No, I was supplementing the same thing. Like, I remember learning Magic the Gathering back in the day, and it's sort of like, okay, at its heart, sure, Kathy's absolutely right. You have cards, and on your turn you play some cards. That's it. But the fact that there is an infinite number of cards, because in the sense that they're still making them, every card will do a different thing, and you have to read that card. So I can remember being, learning that for the first time, having come from playing a family's worth of, all these different card games in the very traditional sense. Like, oh, I know card games like Uno, sure, Rummy, got this covered. And then, what do you mean every different card has its own rule and function? You got to read every card. Good God, Matt.
But I think that's actually one of the things I'd made a note of in terms of kids' games. Like, actual text is one of the challenges, and usually a really great kids' games works kind of language free. But and it's kind of interesting then with Pokemon in that it's this weird thing because it's actually designed for for an older audience, because if you were to look at that game and look at the word content, you're like, oh yeah, that's like 10 plus at least. But you've got this younger audience who are looking at the pictures and saying, I want this, and I remember my nephew collecting the cards back in the 90s when it first came out, and I was at the age to be interested because Magic the Gathering and everything was out at the time, but didn't have the money to collect the cards or didn't have anyone to play with, so I was kind of being a grown-up going, oh, show me that card, let me so what does Pikachu do? All right, okay. So he knew all the stats, but the amount of kids I've met, because I used to run a league here as well, just had no they might have a desire, but they didn't have the language skills to play the game, and the parents were just looking at this text going, I don't understand. Again, it was this it was a new thing, and they just were like, I don't have the headspace to learn this. This just came to mind. So essentially you got to figure out a way to take the text off the cards as that kind of entry level.
Good luck with that.
But so the thing I was actually thinking of was a kind of legacy format where you actually cover over it, and so part of collecting the Pokemon is discovering their abilities, and you get to scratch them up. So you're only revealing information that you need at a time that it's needed, because I think that's a key part of learning that kind of game, is that discovery, and it's just give people what it is they need to know as they learn it, because essentially the biggest problem is a wall of text. It's not actually what's written on it, it's just the perception of this is a wall of text. So if you can eliminate that wall of text even temporarily, it's oh, that's not too scary, and you're kind of revealing things. And it's kind of an approach we took with Prism Arena, where we started everything off on an even keel, so everybody was actually the same, and it's only bit by bit things start changing for the players, and they start discovering the kind of uniqueness and the customization of the game. It wasn't there from the beginning. Now, obviously, very different setups, but that concept of almost like you're trying to start with a kid's game and then build it up into something else, then you can go be free.
All this reading is imprisoning you children. The pictures.
Don't learn to read, kids. You heard it here first. Rory has said.
No. I'm saying the complete opposite. Words have power. So you're actually kind of revealing the words over time.
Yeah.
So now you feel really powerful.
We saw where you were going.
I got you.
So, Josh, from a ThinkFun perspective, how do you approach designing your games, and how do you think about them? Because I imagine you've got quite a broad audience for your games. So I'm wondering if you could kind of talk about that, and then how you actually approach design then in that regard.
we have the advantage of with our product of having this odd little straddling niche. Like if you're, I mean, everybody knows Rush Hour, so I'll start there. Or I shouldn't assume. We have this great game, Rush Hour. It's probably historically our biggest seller. It's little plastic cars on a grid. You can get the app right. You can get rip-offs of the app. So we took ours down. And you put the cars in a certain order, and they only move forward and backward. And the idea is it's a logic puzzle. You shift the cars to try and get the red one out. That's the one that everybody knows. So just from that little explanation, if you'd never heard it, you kind of look at our product and you sort of, well, it's kind of a puzzle, but not like a jigsaw puzzle. It's kind of a brain teaser like a Rubik's Cube, except it's not really like a Rubik's Cube. And it's sort of a game because you play it, but you solve it and you kind of do it yourself and no one really wins. You solve it. So it's not really a game like a game. And all that, it comes with obviously both advantages and disadvantages. Thank you very much. There's our little fella. But so they straddle this fun line between game and toy. And one of the advantages, because there are, again, definitely both dis and advantages. One of the advantages, though, is we can target when we're doing a design to sort of, we can target those, how you play. We can build it into the design and reach for the, maybe target is the wrong word, and have this goal of making it intrinsically understood. So when you see that game, even if you've never heard of it, you see the name Rush Hour and you see all these little plastic cars on a grid, and you're immediately 50% there because, oh, cars drive, where I'm going to be moving these cars on this grid. What's the point? Well, you see how there's one little gate. You got to get the red car out. Obviously, without having to explain it, everybody sort of goes, okay, well, I'm assuming I can't just lift the cars off. So I guess I have to move them the way you move cars and get it out. Okay, I'm there. And we try to build that in. And Kathy will remember this because sometimes it's very easy and sometimes it's a pain in the ass. I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to say ass, but, or butt. Anyway.
all the Pokemon children are like,
he said butt.
I mean, I'll do it again. Usually before the night is out. But we do, so we can, you know, because of that componentry and because of that element of our product line, we are able to sort of build what you do into the design. When we did Gravity Maze, that's been our recent kind of big seller. And you can kind of see what it is. And so you're already mostly there. You understand it. We worked on a project, Kathy in particular kind of saved our bacon on this one, where we had this great puzzle from an inventor. But when we showed it, people just were like, every theme we went through, people were not getting it. And when we turned it into cat crimes, people get it. You're immediately sort of like, okay, it's a deduction thing. One of the cats did a bad thing, because I have cats. I don't really, but that seems to be the response. People get it. Like, I have cats. They do bad stuff. It's like, you're giving me clues. And then okay, all right, I'm there. And to your point, it's like, how much visually can you present on a box cover or in a design and get people far enough into it? And we just have this big thing that we're going through now with the very young games. If it doesn't say matching or counting, I'm speaking for 3 and under since we're in the context of games, parents are just like, I have no idea what to make of this. Or that seems to be the result we're finding in our studies. Like, if it's not counting and it's not matching and it's for little kids, I don't know what it is. So getting people to sort of understand that much of it just from the design really does make or break a kid's game, in my opinion. Like, even as we get older, we find that it's just, if they don't immediately understand it or have some familiarity just upon that first sight, you're like starting by backpedaling.
And I think so that's like, there's a couple of things you've said I think that are really interesting. One, like thinking about ThinkFun products, and one, you have a consistency of design in terms of like the packaging for what I would consider the kind of puzzle game range.
Mm-hmm.
And they do that thing that we were talking about, those games that appear in those big kind of hypermarkets do. Like visually, they tell you what the game is.
Mm-hmm.
Straight off the bat, through the combination of the title and the visual you see on the front. And I don't think we're seeing that in like the board game space at the moment in terms of how games are being portrayed. And I'm so it's kind of got me thinking about the dimensionality of the product. Like it's a lot easier to do that with a 3D product,
100%,
but not so with a board game. Just drawing parallels with like Flippo Frog, where we're trying to figure out how on earth do we convey this short of like putting the grid and putting the product in the front, which is what a lot of people would do. And there's my train of thought, and I need to get it back because it was something else you said.
You can do it.
Yeah. So the existing knowledge of the parent, then, like, so you're also then trying to tap into this existing expectation of what a game is, and it kind of ties into like the idea of innovation. Whereas, like, if you're going to innovate, you innovate on one thing.
Yeah.
But everything else has to be familiar to people, and like that's an interesting challenge that I think we're trying to do all the time. Is you're trying to create something new, but you're trying to keep enough of it the same to help people kind of understand it.
Yeah, it's the desire is always is presented as find the new and exciting. As someone who works with inventors and is asked to do that, and I'm sure you all have experienced that. In fact, I know you have. You're always looking for the new and innovative, but then you get that when people say they want the new and innovative, like you said, they really just want it a little bit new, like something that's really familiar. Like someone who's only eaten American food, and then you blow their minds with Mexican, and you're sort of like, wait, it's a hamburger. It's just spiced differently, and they're holding the bun like this. You with me now? Okay, right. Trust me, but lettuce, cheese, tomato, it's all still there. They call it salsa. It's different, but it's the same.
So I should actually point out while we're talking, Robin is in the chat, and we know him for many years, and he's designed Little Monster Came for Lunch and Stayed for Tea. And he's talking about the reasoning behind it, but kind of lower down, he's making a question or making a comment about ages on boxes. So I have an idea of what he's saying, but I'm kind of curious, Robin, from your perspective, what are you saying about people misunderstanding the reasons? Because generally, I know in the kind of hobby sphere, anyway, people put 14 plus just because they don't want to do safety testing on the game because it's a legal requirement. I know when we do it, we're actually really thinking about the age, like the language in the game and how easy it is for someone. We think of it in terms of if someone was given this game, could they play it? That's how I think about it. And we get a lot of people kind of saying, "Oh, this game can be played by younger kids," and we're like, "Yeah, with adult help and supervision, but you wouldn't just give it to them." So that's kind of an interesting thing. Like, when you approach that, how do you tackle thinking about kind of age suitability for the games?
We definitely go through the play testing, and then there is a conversation where we would say, okay, this is based on what we have, based on what the design is now, this is the youngest age that will understand it with some adult supervision. This is where they can kind of, a year or two later, maybe in months, they can kind of get it on their own. You'd have to explain it to them, but once they know the game, they can play it on their own. This, and then hopefully there's another one that comes up from playtesting where we can sort of say, this is sort of the sweet spot. This is where they actually enjoy it. This is where like are getting into sort of reasoning how they might do one turn after, versus another, make one decision. And so we'll make a recommendation based on that. And it usually isn't the youngest, because kids have a tendency to grow. And in our experience with children's games, if you say like, well, they can understand it at 6, you can probably get away with putting 7 or 8 on it, because parents will be like, well, in 2 years, they're going to be 7 or 8. Right now.
No, you go, my child is smart.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Every kid's a genius. But ideally, you sort of put a little bit before where the sweet spot is, so they might be able to grow into it. But then you have to admit that the sales team side does get in and go like, to be clear, some games you want to put 14 in, you want to make sure like it's grown-ups and it's appealing in that way. Other games you want to get as wide a net as possible, so don't limit it, because it'll go on a different shelf when it gets to retail, and then we'll lose that eye on the product from the consumer. So, and it doesn't factor into it, because it does.
I'm gonna come back to that age on the box and in relation to like quality and kids games. But Kathy, I want to ask you both, but I kind of wanted to ask you first, in terms of like both of you have
it's okay.
Like you both have a really strong background in product design. So like, how does that influence, like, have you had a chance to kind of apply that yet with Pokemon? I know you've done it with ThinkFun, but how does it influence your approach to designing, let's say, kids games?
It's a little different at Pokemon than at ThinkFun, because we're such a well-known brand. It kind of speaks for itself. So it's really about characters when it comes to Pokemon. So if you go to Target or wherever, your friendly local game store, and you see a V box and the character is Pikachu V, that's what's selling that. It's Pikachu. So when it comes to products, like sure, we can ideate about new things, but it's mostly just how can we feature different characters in new ways, if that makes sense. The product side of Pokemon, if you ever go on Pokemon Center, that's a whole different beast. Different people, different team, and they do a great job at what they do, but that's considered more merchandise. So when we're coming up with stuff for the trading card game, it's really, sometimes it ties to a game, like there was the Sword and Shield starters box that you could get. So it just happened to come out around the same time that Sword and Shield came out. So that's kind of where we go with product design. It's more of tying together a theme and a character.
But do you think there'll be an opportunity, I kind of think in terms of your skill set, like there's this great opportunity to tie mechanic together. Like you still lead with the character, but I'm sure you've learned a thing or two at ThinkFun around like interesting mechanics and systems that you could use as part of the gameplay. So to me, it's like, it comes down to that IP based stuff where you buy the thing because it's like, oh yeah, it's Charizard, this is great, but like, and oh my god, it's actually there's something else in here that's kind of worth getting excited about, rather than that just being the only thing to get excited at. Like I'm throwing down these gauntlets to you like left, right, and center. It's just like, I want to see this as well.
Yeah, right. Honestly, who knows what the future could bring? That's all I'll say.
Clever. Which really means because we're totally taking every idea you have, Rory.
She's like off camera. She's just like making notes.
Pokemon cards. What's that?
I notice her hands are below the camera, so she's just like making notes the whole time.
Like typing over
Pokemon
here,
dexterity game. Okay, very good. Kathy, I did want to. You've got a copy of it right behind you, the Battle Academy box. What was the thinking behind it? Because obviously there's been there's been starter sets in Pokemon since the beginning of time, which have generally been aimed at the younger audience. It's a relatively low price point to get them into the game. There have been some 2-player starter sets back in the day, obviously, because you want people to get into the game and kick it off. But this is a very sort of like different looking product, even though it is, it is at its heart the TCG. So what was the sort of like the train of thought behind it, I guess?
Yeah, sure. So the biggest difference, as you can see, is it comes in a box. And the biggest reasoning behind this is that, remember how I said a lot of people don't understand that the trading card game is actually a game. They think it's just cards that you purchase. And a lot of times when you purchase Pokemon cards, they're in a separate section. So I keep going back to Target, but let's even at a grocery store. A lot of times Pokemon cards are close to the checkout, and they're hanging in whatever assortment they have, usually next to other trading cards, baseball cards, whatever, you name it. So this format was specifically chosen because it fits into the game section. So that family game section with other board games, so that families and parents can make that connection that this is something that needs to be played. Not just something that I'm buying and doing whatever with. The other reason is that it actually comes with a physical board instead of a just trifold playmat, which is what normally goes into our products. It is a learn to play playmat that is basically printed on a board that is, what you would find in your normal board game, actual stock board. So it's very small changes, but it kind of goes back to that, what do parents know and what do parents not know? To connect it, to get it into that audience of people that are looking at board games, and to get them to realize that this is something that you need to sit down and actually learn and play, if that makes sense.
So it's actually, sorry, my brain is firing again. It's funny, we took a similar approach with Untold, introducing a board into something that was essentially, a game of the imagination. That's kind of a really interesting concept. But in terms of gameplay, have you seen like how with Cardfight Vanguard and the company that published that, Bushiroad, they brought out like Buddy Fight, which was like it was like a generally a lighter version of Card Fight. Like, do you think there's opportunity to do something like that with Pokemon? Because it's like at the moment these two things are trying to be shoehorned together to some degree, whereas if you kind of go, well, actually there's talking about kids games and what's needed for that audience, to just actually kind of go, what's the heart of Pokemon, bake it into something new, because quite often you'll be surprised where that actually bizarrely becomes the bigger thing. Even at this stage, it's the kind of thing that can happen where it changes people's perception of the game.
Yeah. I would say, again, the future, who knows what it holds. But when it comes to Pokemon, the other big argument that I get from being a fan and a player of the game is you're kind of missing the catching element, honestly, when it comes to the trading card game. So I would love to see something that involves that better.
Yeah.
There are licensed Pokemon board games from back in the day.
I have a copy of Master Trainer 1.
Yes, the Pokemon Master Trainer is a great example of a game that doesn't make a lot of sense, but the mechanic is based on catching the Pokemon as opposed to just fighting them. I definitely played that in college at a couple parties. I just like lug it around.
There's actually some slightly remixed rule sets on BGG that kind of make it a much more playable game. It's actually pretty good.
Yeah, the modified rules make it way better, but yeah, just something that happened that I can't speak to how well it sold or anything like that, but I think if we ever went into board games again, we would just need to get maybe a better connection to actually the gameplay to make it feel like you're getting that Pokemon experience. Kind of like what you said, Rory, like how can we actually embody, whether we decide it's the video game or a trading card game, I don't know, into a game that actually plays well and works well for our brand. So that's a big question and a big what if.
So many secrets.
Write down all my notes.
But God
So-
help you if there's a scratch off card in the next Pokemon game. You're
No,
giving away gold.
Hey, there was in WoW TCG. Come on.
what was I going to say? So, in terms of constantly trying to bring the conversation back to, one of the things I kind of want to touch on is the idea of kids' games being seen as somehow less than in terms of board games, and this ties in with the whole idea of age, because I've heard people say, "Oh, that's got like 7+ on it, so therefore it's not really a game for me, or it's going to be too simple, or blah 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 blah."
Mm-hmm.
And it just becomes this immediate like, nope, gonna pass that one by.
I'm feeling the rage building within me. I get really angry about this kind of thing.
Well, why don't you
Really
start,
good.
Michael? What are your thoughts on that?
Remember, you
A
can't get
a good game is a good game regardless, in my opinion. A good kids game should have appeal to adults as well. One that gets a hell of a lot of play in this house is Animal Upon Animal, Tier After Tier, from the folks at Haber, because it's got everything you want in a game. It's got moments of tension. It's got moments of randomness. It's got moments of utter glory, and it's fantastic and fabulous. And I've played that, knockout tournament championships with 24 people, to have sort of the all final standing greatest tier out tier player, that sort of thing. But just because it comes in a shiny yellow box and has a 6+ or whatever on the side of the box, so many capital G gamers dismiss it because it's like, well, that is a daft and dumb kids game. I did grab a couple of games from my collection downstairs, because there's another one that I absolutely adore, which I did manage to pick up last time we were at Essen, which is called Karambalage. And this is literally just a game about flicking stuff into other stuff. But holy crap, this has been the source of arguments. This has been the source of tension. A 3.5 hour game of The Gallerist by, Vital Lacerda has nothing on this damn thing. Because, you're trying to sort of maneuver this little disc into smashing it into another disc by bouncing it off a wooden block. And it's just sort of this is freaking amazing. It's so good. And I just really love the approach that Haber have, because they're very much, the idea is the games that they put out are they are playable for families. And maybe this is very specifically for the German audience that they initially target, which has a much sort of wider history of game acceptance, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Gaming is very much part of the family lifestyle for a large amount of German families. But you see the lifestyle shots for pretty much any Haber game, and yes, it's definitely kids, but there are grown-ups in there as well getting involved and getting played, which is fantastic. I got a lot of time for it. Another one that I really like is one I brought up from upstairs. Rory, I think you got a copy of this as well, but it's Let's Catch the Lion, which it's just shogi, but it's a super stripped back, 4 pieces each version of shogi, played on a 3x4 board, which is literally just sort of it's my first shogi set, but it's designed beautifully, it's bright, it's colorful, it's eye-catching, and it's also incredibly fun. I have sat down with grown-ups across the other side of the board, some sort of weird take on the Queen's Gambit, and it's here we go, let's play. And it's let's catch the lion. It's great. There are plenty of amazing kids games out there that really function well as grown-up games, in my opinion. And I just wish that they had bigger bigger hype, I guess. More people to know about them.
And so I'm gonna ask in terms of, I guess, what you've played or what you've worked on. What are some games that you think transcend that kind of categorization of a kid's game? And I'll ask Josh first this time.
Oh, sorry. I honestly thought you had said Michael specifically. So
Oh God, no. I mean, the only official kids game that I've had any vague hand in is probably Flip Over Frog, and Rory's going to talk about that in a bit. I'm quite sure I see it over his shoulder.
No, I mean, I have my reaction is similar to Michael's. I'm in a lot of ways. I think the challenge is marketing. Like a lot of ThinkFun stuff, I would say the vast majority of it is perceived as kids' games. Like when you see Rush Hour, it's rainbow, multicolored cars on a little gray grid. All of our stuff looks that way. And we have tried with, I'll be generous and say mixed success, to explain that while you're buying our game for your children, most commonly, survey says, and you're handing our game to your children, when you get into it, I mean, if you as an adult, if you are like, I am an adult, I have a house, I've done all the adult things and college, and you sit down and tackle like the advanced puzzles on ours, not even the expert, like some of the intermediates in some cases, they are darned hard.
Strike two, Josh.
No, that's it. And we've tried to express that, I struggle and fail with a lot of our advanced and expert puzzles on a lot of our games, and we've tried to say, hey, we've repackaged them, we've done different designs, we've done different versions to say this is good for you too. We can actually back this up with research that says you can improve your brain. All that, the company takes a lot of pride in that, in solving these puzzles, and it has never really worked commercially very well. And I think it's so faced with that, to Michael's point, when you're looking, because I like Animal Upon Animal and Super Rhino. There's a bunch of kids games that I also enjoy, that my family enjoys. But you can play them as an adult and have an enjoyable experience. So when you're looking at it and it's a new product and you don't know, it's that kind of age-old question, like, all right, if we make this look too grown up, and then we sell it to gamers, will kids realize that families can play it? Or do we go the other way? We make it like there's cute little animals and it's wood and it's a yellow box and it's lovely and it's a stacking game and you'll totally dig it, and just hope that grown-ups will play it too when they get enough home, but it really looks like a present for kids. And I think a lot of that's the challenge, because you also run the risk of saying, don't worry, we can do both. And if you can pull that off, I can't think of any. I have never been able to successfully do it, because you end up compromising both, and then it's neither one enough to be a successful product. And I know that's a very commercial view, because I'm with you. There are a bunch of quote unquote kids games that are just a hoot, and I love playing them. So,
that's actually a really interesting point. Sorry, Kathy, cutting across, in terms of the visual and the presentation of the game, because there's all of this stuff going on in that game that's being put out, and you're trying to communicate who it's for, but you're like, but it's for more people. But if you say it's for everybody, it loses it. And this is something with Prism Arena, for example. We designed the game to kind of level up with the players. But we also wanted to veer away from the kind of overly dark aesthetic that appears in so many arena or combat games, because we went games can be fun, you just have to shift your thinking about it. So Prism Arena is more like laser tag, all of the stuff that you'd get in a Games Workshop combat game, but you just don't die, essentially, is the main difference. But it's incredible how people can play Animal Crossing and really cute games on digitally.
I'm attacked. No.
No, because this is the thing.
I'm not saying anything.
I love this stuff. No, what I'm saying is, like, there's people who love like playing games, and on like the whole kind of like 8-bit aesthetic lends itself to a kind of a cuter look. But yet, when they see it in a game, it's like, oh no, that's for kids. Like, have you looked at your playlist? And I think this is something we struggle with in the game industry. Somehow, like in the tabletop industry, that there's a different set of standards as to what is deemed like suitable for adults to play versus what's happening in the video game space.
Like, Kathy, you mentioned playing Root earlier. If you want a laugh, just go into the laugh stroke, desperately sad look at the universe. If you look at the comments for Root on BGG, like the low value ones, the low rated ones, it's sort of like, why is this child's game invading my war game space? And it's sort of like,
what?
Whoa! Take a step back, baby, because that is a wrong take. But yeah, Rory, you hit the nail on the head. I think people will see the cutesy, chibi look or a more cartoony look, and a lot of people immediately sort of like dismiss and go, "Yep, this is definitely a kid's game." Anyway, Kathy, I apologize. You're up next.
So actually, when I play board games with my friends that maybe aren't quite as deep into games or are trying to get started, I usually recommend kids games to start. It's just easier to pick up. The other thing that people maybe don't want to talk about is time. Like, you could sit down and play Gloomhaven, sure, that's going to take a long time. But if I'm at a bar, maybe someday in the future when COVID's gone, with my husband, we'll just take like a stack of anything from like Game Right games to just fun card games that you can get. And we'll just sit down and blow through a bunch of them over a couple beers. And that to me is an enjoyable experience. So anything from like, I'm trying to think what's the newest one. Abandon All Artichokes is fun, or, Trash Pan is
by Hammer. Yeah.
You can just crank out a game, and then the best part is you kind of have provided a gateway to people, so we can kind of then go, oh, did you like that? Well, let's work on a set collecting game the next time we play. But the other one I really wanted to call out was My Little Scythe. I personally, I think I actually enjoy My Little Scythe more than Scythe. It's just a really fun take, and it kind of harkens to all of those junior versions of games. I actually wish I could sit down with adults and play the junior versions as our kind of intro before we try to tackle something like Catan for a first-time player, because I think they just, something about learning the rules, they just are overwhelmed and not ready. So I think junior and My Little versions are great. I love them. Amazing. I'll play them all the time. We play My Little Scythe more than we play Scythe, honestly.
Thank you for speaking the truth.
Yes, I have to agree.
My Little Scythe is just like, it's Scythe, this dark European alternate universe, or the grim dark nature of it. It's just like, I'm an owl and I'm going to run around and hurl pies at people. Let's go. Also airships. It's great.
But I think, there's another side to that too. It's even when you know the game, like sometimes it's, I mean, I play, when I'm not playing them for my job, I play games to relax. And while, yes, I'm definitely in the mood for a heavy experience sometimes I'm like, I don't know that I want to commit to Puerto Rico, but I am down for some San Juan. I'm like, let's just water this baby down and have a much shorter, very and equally, to Kathy's point, enjoyable experience. Of quasi Euro, but I didn't have to be like in it for a few hours here.
I've been working with a mentee as part of the tabletop mentorship program, which is incredible. And he was very interested in learning about. He'd traditionally been designing games for himself, and he was thinking about designing kind of children's games. And he got to talk to somebody, I think it was at Ravensburger, actually, if I remember correctly. who kind of gave feedback about like what makes a good kids game. And one of the things was time. It needs to play in a shorter period of time. And I am all for best of 3 type games. Where I'd rather play a shorter game that you enjoy enough that you want to play it a second time, rather than, oh no, wait, but by the time you get to the 60-minute mark of this game, this is when it really kicks in. You're like, no, I don't have that time. But also, it's that thing of it's simple enough that you can kind of learn it yourself.
Yeah.
Or with kind of minimal help. So after the first game, you can play it again. But I also think there's quite often with younger players, they're more tolerant of high risk, high reward as well over the strategic planning, and it's also kind of like brain development and that side of things. So there is a big aspect of where people kind of go like, roll and move, and they look down at that kind of concept of game. But for younger players, that is how their world operates. Like they are at the whim of the world, and they don't really have a whole lot of control over it. So rolling dice and blowing into them and trying to control the outcome, by sheer will, is kind of reflective of life, and that's why it's an easier thing.
I think that's a really astute viewpoint. I'm laughing because it suddenly was like, okay, you're offering me the chance to play Candyland, Mom and Dad. Am I getting candy at any point? The answer is no. Then you're right. I don't care. Sure, roll dice. I'm getting the candy. I'll play your game. Whatever.
But in terms of artwork, and it kind of ties in with something that Yoss just said, is about the age on Combo Clash. So I'm going to reach for it here.
It just so happens that Mr. Rory O'Connor has a copy there.
Yeah, I should remember. Yeah, so it's actually, that's actually listed as age 10 plus. Which there's an element to kind of learning the game initially that I think that's why we went for that age on it. But this can totally be played by a younger audience. The thing is, it's a bit kind of Pokemon-esque in that whilst there's no language on it, it is all about comboing. And you got to learn how to make the most of those combos to make the game work. But I'm kind of really interested because we did go for a kind of younger artwork on this. We went for quite a cute, I would say, bright, vibrant artwork because this definitely appeals to all ages. And it's trying to, if we had made this dark and dwarves and elves fighting with each other, we would have got that audience because the gameplay plays like a game of Magic in that comboing aspect. But we wanted to bring it further. So I'd love to kind of come back and have this conversation and go, yeah, well, the game didn't sell. So that just confirms,
Well,
yeah, cute artwork doesn't work.
But that's kind of what I was saying about, when you're making that decision. I mean, the example that I always think of is Century Spice Road versus Century. I mean, it's been called out before. It's the same game. It's not even a different. It's the same game. Why do 2? Are you cutting into your sales? And I enjoy playing games with my, and let me be clear here, non-gamer family. They really like Century Spice Road. I got the one because it's a group of people that can wrap their heads around the Silk Road and trading spices, and they like Splendor. So it's a souped up Splendor a little bit with a similar abstract, but not really. There's nothing there. But I know that if I was like, okay, hear me out here. They're golems. Okay, so it's like a monster that, how would I explain Golem? All right, you can see that movie. So that, and that's deliberately why I went that route with it. But it's equally as cool. I frankly, I'm a little more into the fantasy. I enjoy the Golem side of it better, but I deliberately got the other one because I knew it would get more play, at least in my little world. So I would love to be a fly on the wall in that sales meeting to go, okay, which one really does move more? Now that you've got them out, now that you're established as a company, okay, which copy is selling more and what are the demographics? Because I feel like at least ThinkFun and Ravensburg, every company has had that. Well, could we do one for kids with this goofy theme and colors and bright, and one that's like the dark, mysterious, whatever, and see which one works better? Most teams would say no.
Yeah, and I think most people veer towards the kind of darker aesthetic.
Let us do the grim dark side.
But that's the thing. Okay, like if Pokemon said, like, we're going to release whatever the translation for not pocket monsters is, just regular monsters, and they look like the things from Monster Hunter Tri, but it's the same game. You know, different characters are just really huge and dark and menacing looking. Would it?
So you're saying, Josh, there just needs to be a game called Mon?
Yeah.
Mon.
Mon, like
Pokemon After Dark.
Red box Mon. What's Japanese for that?
Robin makes a point in the chat, except My Little Scythe is the success story that beats the trend. I am going to argue against that. My Little Scythe did sell pretty well and continues to do okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they got the sequel and the expansion and everything for it. But you compare it to the amount of copies that Scythe sold, it's, again, it is a drop in the ocean. It is nothing in comparison.
And I would argue it only sold because Scythe existed.
True.
I don't think that game would have worked because we're all buying it because we want like the idea of playing Scythe, but we don't have the time or the energy for it, and we want to introduce it to other people. So we went with My Little Scythe. You know exactly what the creator of that variant did.
Yeah, Hobie Chow.
Yeah, I think if you created a game called, My Little Harkness or whatever the hell it is, that's Strike Once Rory. If that game was released, people would be like, it's just going to like float on by.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have all that prejudice. What's happened is, it's people are already tying it to a game that they know. Elsewhere, same with kind of Jaws of the Line as well.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's people are willing to pay that, and that's why it's kind of it's got its placement where it has in Target. Because this other game has been hugely successful, but they just don't want that game. They want something different from it.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard players of Gloomhaven. I haven't tried Jaws of the Line. I like Gloomhaven, but from all the reviews that I've heard, I would that's the one thing is you're like, man, you got to commit to this setup. And so I'm reading the back of that box, going like, I can just turn the page and get going. Oh, I kind of see why that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think that's a way with kind of bringing the whole thing back in terms of kind of kids games and bringing more like adults into playing games with kids as well. I actually think how you bring people into the game is really, really important. It's a combination of familiarity. So whether it's an IP or something like that, I think how the rules are taught are crucial, and it's where Jaws of the Lines works. It's where we've seen with Prison Arena that staged approach has helped as well, where you're kind of leveling up as you play. I think you've done it as well with the Battle Academy because you start with structured decks at the beginning, if I understand correctly. So you're kind of going through the process and learning the mechanics that way. I think that's a part of it is like just starting with it's like riding a bicycle where there's someone holding you from behind when you start, and then at some point you realize they've let go and you're still going. That's kind of, I think, something. It's hard work to do that, but I think that's what we're going to have to do with games if we want to broaden out that audience. Or we can just wait till we all start having more kids and introducing games, because that's what happened in Germany. It kind of happened over time where it just became
build an army.
Yeah.
The generation that actually learned Pokemon. Those will be some crazy doctors. Get a healing potion, plant-based, you fool.
Oy, 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 oy. Robin suggests My Little Magic. I think you'll find that the My Little Pony CCG is, and I'm sorry, Kathy, the greatest trading card game of all time, but it's not for kids.
It's My Little Netrunner.
Yeah.
My Little Netrunner.
Yeah. The MLP collectible card game is definitely, it's Netrunner for kids. But not for kids.
Back when we had tabletop day, I definitely walked in on a group of like very, very adult males that were like heatedly arguing over a game, and I wandered over and had to like real quick hold in a snort because My Little Ponies like spread out all over the table, and I was like, honestly, I'll admit, total prejudice, but did not expect that that's what you were having audible in the game shop argument about.
Watch yourself, Josh.
No, I hear you. Not judging. I dig it. I dig it. I love the new updated design. I'm right there with you. Not bringing it down in any way. Just fully admitting that I walked into, heard the argument, was like, didn't expect it was going to be My Little Ponies. Like,
actually, I've just remembered as well what T-shirt I'm wearing today. So. Now that I'm telling this story, I could see you as the kind of person who might be like, they were coming close to physical, altercation. When you don't get the, friendship is magic, man. Friendship is magic
until it's not, and then I will crush you.
Yeah.
I was thinking as you were talking, like all of the different, like the way they did with sides, introduce it in a different way. I was thinking of like Pokemon Rush Hour, where you've got like the Pokemon trying to. It's like you got to get to the battle arena.
Kathy, you're giving us that license.
It's the ultimate crossover between you two.
Yeah,
you can have that. It's Pikachu trying to get out of a Pokeball.
Yeah,
like do we know what's inside a Pokeball when a Pokemon is inside there?
Oh, it would be like the puzzle balls.
Yeah.
So Perplexus. If you have Pikachu inside the Perplexus,
poor Pokemon trapped in an endless maze. No wonder it's
So on a completely like side note, but that kind of the idea of the kind of tragic aspect of Pokemon, I have to highly bear with me. I have to highly recommend Kaiju Max as a comic book series.
Mm-hmm.
And the current one features Polka Dawn, who is like basically a crime lord who's doing time, because it's essentially The Wire meets Godzilla, where it's incredibly like it really touches a nerve. The guy has just gotten some kind of magic between the two, and you can see over like the first few issues, it was like, oh, this is kind of a joke, and then it kind of like found its groove, and I teared up at the end of the first series. I was like, there was just an image that was just like, whew, that was hard, and like I love The Wire, but yeah, it's at times funny, but the magnification of it, like the idea of like these Pokemon who have been kind of like abused by they're kind of like pit bulls trained by humans to fight, and they kind of have their revenge, and one of them ends up doing time for it. I should share that with the team.
Yeah, I just did a check. According to Pokemon Sun and Moon producer Junichi Masuda, I think it's safe to say that it's very comfortable inside of a Pokeball. It's a very comfortable environment, maybe the equivalent of a high-end suite room in a fancy hotel. So now we know. So you just got to move the bed out of the way, and then move the TV, and then there you go.
Yeah, it's like Rush Hour. It's a little bit cramped.
Bet you never thought we'd have this conversation on this episode. It always goes off the rails. I apologize for nothing.
So I think I covered everything. I had written
We've
down.
solved kids' games. Fantastic.
Nice. I wasn't thinking I was going to be able to check that box on my list today, so that's a win for me. I'm putting the day in the win column.
You can sign off work now. It's okay. I just solved the major problem. I'm gonna go.
I figured it out. No, I'll tell you tomorrow. It's like the end of the day.
So, before we go, is there anything you can tell us that you're kind of working on or excited to see coming, whether it's your own thing or something else?
I would say we do have some new puzzles due out. They are in the vein of classic ThinkFun puzzles, in that it's like when you look at the puzzle itself, it's pretty traditional what ThinkFun does, but we've got some updated design and like twists on them. So the design and the toy part of it is new and inventive. So I'm pretty excited for those. And then past that, we do have some other secret stuff that I'm super excited to share, but I can't I'm under a gag order, at least for the next couple of months. So
not like a joke order.
All right, you know what? I'm gonna let that one go. It's late where you are.
I have to work with this. You only get to see it every once in a while. I have to work with it.
Excuse me, you are far worse than me.
How dare you, sir? How dare you?
Kathy, anything you're excited about? And
that you're allowed to tell us about.
You can at least allude to.
Yeah. All I can say, well, the one thing I can say that you can actually get now is, Pokemon, we do theme decks. We just have a new set of theme decks that's called V Battle Decks, which features Pokemon V, which is pretty cool. So it's Blastoise V and Venusaur V. So excited to see how those go when I get some people out there playing those. We've been having a crazy year, so it's the 25th anniversary year, so just keep your eye out for cool stuff.
Nice.
I find it weird that Pokemon is absolutely exploding at the moment. Tens of thousands of people watching boxes being opened on live streams. Grown adults going into McDonald's and spending $300 on Happy Meals to get promo cards. Feels good, man. Feels good.
I actually really miss it.
I'd love to start playing again, but you can't get cards anywhere over it.
Well, I actually went looking for the Battle Academy before the talk, and it's not available in Northern Ireland. None of the stores have it.
I'll have to just send you a copy, Rory.
I was going to say, Rory, you know someone, right? I can't speak for Kathy, but dang.
Actually, just while we're here, Kathy, you got your copy of Prism Arena, did you?
Yes, I do have it. It looks great.
He was a playtester, Josh.
I designed I mean, granted, you sent me a check for it, but still.
I'm pretty sure we can get you a copy, Josh. I shall speak to I'll speak to Emma in the morning.
She did actually try. This was pre-COVID, so I said, "Don't bother on this." The famous last words. My response was, "Because I want some of the others too, like Adventure Mart. So don't bother paying shipping and handling from Ireland. I'll get it when I see you guys."
Yeah.
Well, we might get to go to Nuremberg.
I did play that. Yeah. That's a good time.
Cool. Well, we'll sort you out, Josh, for that. I am going to say very quickly before we go, because it's a great question. Robin's asking, what designer game would you want to see implemented as a kids version?
What designer game?
Posh games like what we do play.
Yeah.
I'll start while you're.
Oh, go.
No, you've got one. Go.
I have played it with kids and it's okay, but I would really like to see like Everdell, younger with cute little baby animals. Like maybe it's the offspring of the townspeople, but it's like a baby otter, and that would be my money. I would just buy multiple copies of that.
So it's like Muppet Babies, but for Everdell.
Exactly. Maybe they're in the daycare and they have to build some. I don't know.
Yeah, they build a town out of blocks.
Yes,
and cushions and stuff.
I gotta think of that and get back to you. I gotta be honest, because I wouldn't want it to be like a battle game, because part of what makes a good battle game to me is the structure and the nuance of how you. And if you water that down, then you're just playing like, a notch above war. So I'd want it to be something a little more Euro-y, I think, but I'd have to.
Well, I'll throw it in, because we played Pret-a-Porter with now it wasn't quite a kids version. Our children were kind of 12 and 14 at the time. But as a concept, like the idea of like putting together this kind of like fashion show and earning points, they really liked it, because it was kind of like an economic game, but wasn't about kind of trading on the Mediterranean, as we kind of joke about. So that concept, but streamlining that gameplay down into something that played in less than 3 hours would be great. Because that was a game we played like over 2 nights. That's something I'd be interested in.
I wouldn't mind seeing a kid-stroke family-friendly, approachable version of 18XX, because then maybe I'd understand it.
Is that not the whole point of those games, that like, hey, we're complex and you have to be a certain kind of person to understand them?
Yeah, but I feel that's very gatekeepy. So let Michael play what he wants to play. Do like a super straightforward thing. Like I've heard there's a game called 18 Lilliput, which sort of extrapolates it back down into a bit more. It's more sort of like action selection, as opposed to you need to make the right choices at the right time or you're going to fail miserably. So maybe that might be sort of like a good first step into it. But it's a big series of games I've always wanted to at least try. So yeah, maybe some sort of like 1803 playable by 3 and up.
Kind of very quickly, we've got Pandemic.
How would that work? Just running around the zoo.
I thought of Pandemic too, but then I would say Forbidden Island.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Merchant of Venus. So I think a good kind of young pick up and deliver game would be great.
Yeah.
Sort of like an enhanced version of Mall Madness then. Rather than just going to a place to get things. It's not like you get things, but you also got to drop them off in places.
Yeah.
And Kingdom Beth Monster.
Just all the monsters called Beth. Okay, that'll work.
Cool. Have you got one, Josh, or we'll wrap it up? I think.
No, unfortunately, I do need to step into something else here. So.
Yeah.
Well, we should finish.
For me, anyway, to wrap up.
Sounds good.
First to leave.
So you arrive late, and then you tell us you have to finish. Well, if you're turned up, you know what? We're gonna keep you here.
Are we able to do that?
No.
I feel like Agatha Harkness. You can do that?
Yeah. Right, we're going to stop, because if we get into one division, we'll never leave.
Yeah, it'll goes off. Yeah.
So much. Are you guys on social media, like actively?
Yes.
That you're willing to share? You don't have to be.
I'm really just on Facebook.
You can tag my Twitter. It's at K2TheBey, BEY.
I'm cool. Josh Weston on Facebook. I don't do any of your tweeting or linking or whatever you kids are doing these days.
You've got a rocking chair in your front porch.
You're going to be the world's best 88-year-old man.
That's right. Exactly. What's the word again? Not troglodyte, Kathy. What's the other one?
I thought it was troglodyte.
Oh, I thought there was another one. There's troglodyte, and then there was Luddite.
Luddite.
Oh, yeah.
One doesn't understand it. One chooses not to. I'm the grumpy one. I'm choosing not to.
Okay.
You kids with your modern technology, I'm going to sit here with my plastic sliding cars and everything's going to be fine.
Damn right.
All right, we're going to get out of here as well. Yeah, seriously, Kathy and Josh, thank you very much indeed for your time. We truly appreciate it.
Miss you guys.
Ludoite.
Oh.
There you go. It's like somebody who doesn't want to learn new game rules. Cool.
Go.
So, yeah, go. We'll see y'all later. Thank you very much, Steve, for joining us. Me and him will be back on Friday for some more Prism Arena, I am sure. Have a lovely rest of your day, folks. We'll catch up with you again soon.